Right, let's start with the introduction of this SAP UI5. Let me check whether any newcomers are there. Anirban, Madhusudan, Manoj, Ramesh, Sridhar, Venkat, Vijay, Bhargav, Vikas. Fine. So all of you are my old students only. So nothing to introduce. Done. So what we'll do is we'll quickly understand what we are going to discuss in SAP UI5. Okay, and let us proceed further. So see here, as part of this SAP UI5, we have segregated into two parts. One is front-end development and what back-end development. So first of all, what is the main purpose of this SAP UI5? It is used for what? Developing web applications. Okay, it is used for developing web applications compatible with what? Desktop, laptop, okay, tablets, or what? Smartphones. Okay, so if you want to develop any web application which is compatible with these devices in a SAP environment, we go for what? SAP UI5. Okay, so the main purpose is developing the web applications. So as part of this SAP UI5, we have what? Front end development and what? Back end development. Basically in the real time we have two types of roles: front end developer and back end developer. So when you are saying that you are a front end developer, so as part of this front end development, okay, we would be discussing what? HTML, you can observe here, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and what? jQuery. So what I can say is, to get into this UI5 front end, it is assumed that we already know what? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and what? jQuery. And then we can go for what? This UI5 front-end library. Okay. So as part of our course, we'll be discussing these things, and then we'll be going for what? UI5. So again, we should not focus much on these things. Okay, so if you know basics of these things, it is sufficient. So here we assume that we don't know anything about this JavaScript and jQuery, and we'll start from a very basic level. So to begin with, for the overall duration for front end would be what? Around 45 days. Okay, here I mentioned 2-3 days, but I'll restrict it to 2 days only. In 2 days, we'll be discussing what? HTML and what? CSS. Okay, and then main focus will be from what? JavaScript onwards, because JavaScript is a prerequisite for getting into this what? UI5 front end. So after 2 days of this HTML, we'll be starting with JavaScript. We'll be discussing JavaScript for 1 week, and then after this JavaScript, we'll be getting into what? UI5 front end development, which includes UI5 framework and what? Fairy. This would go for 30 to what? 35 days. So main focus would be from what? JavaScript onwards. Okay, so to who can do this front end departments, the eligibility is what? Any ABAP consultant or any non-SAP consultant can get into what? Front-end development. So what I mean to say is, even if you are from, even if you are not from SAP background, okay, you can get into what? Front-end development. Okay, even if you're ABAP consultant also, we are eligible for what? Getting into this front-end development. Okay, so to do this front-end development, we require what? Eclipse tool and what? WebID tool. Okay, so as part of our course, once I complete JavaScript, okay, I'll take one session on how to install what? Eclipse tool, and during the course we'll also see how to install what? WebID tool. So you don't require any SAP software to do this front end development. Okay, only with Eclipse tool and WebID tool we can do this front end development. And why we require these two tools means, okay, there are some companies who are using Eclipse, and there are in some projects they are using what? WebID tool. Okay, WebID is what? SAP's own tool. Okay, and where the Eclipse tool is an open source tool. Okay, anyone can use this, whereas WebID tool is SAP's own tool. Okay, so it's always better we know the development process both in what? Eclipse and what? WebID. Okay, so WebID will minimize the development process. Okay, but to get into web IDE, it is always better first we become strong in what Eclipse, because in Eclipse we'll do the development from the very scratch level, so that even if you get any issues in web IDE we can easily resolve it. That is the reason focus will be first on Eclipse tool, then during the course we'll get into what web IDE tool also. Okay, and for this developing this HTML, CSS, JavaScript and jQuery, we don't require any additional software. Even our plain notepad is also what sufficient. Okay, even by using this notepad or notepad plus plus, we can develop this particular HTML, CSS, JavaScript and what jQuery. Okay, and to get much information on this HTML and JavaScript kind of thing, refer to the site what w3schools.com. Okay, and for UI5 Frontend library, that is UI5 Framework and Ferry, you have to refer to a site called what sap ui5.ana.ondemand.com. Okay, so this is your front-end development, which includes what around 45 days. Eligibility is any ABAP consultant or non-SAP consultant. And after completing this front end part, we'll be getting into a back end part. This should be for 25 days to what 1 month. As part of this back end, we'll be seeing how to develop the OData services in different ways. OData service development. Okay, that is nothing but NetWeaver gateway. So by using this NetWeaver gateway tool, we develop what OData service. The prerequisites for getting into this backend part is we require basic ABAP and object-oriented ABAP concepts. Okay, but for front end, you don't require any ABAP background. Okay, so but for backend, you must be very strong in what basic ABAP and what object and ABAP. Here, for doing this backend development, we require what SAP software. We require EHP7 configured with what NetWeaver gateway. Okay, so after doing what some part of backend, we'll be seeing how to integrate this backend part in what front end. So this is our overall curriculum. So I can see the overall course would be for around 2.5 months. For the first 45 days, we'll be discussing the front end part, and later on we'll be going for what back end part. Okay, and there are some participants who already attended back end part. So what I'll do for them is once I complete the front end part, okay, 4 or 5 days I'll take sessions on what how to integrate the back end part in what front end. Then after that I'll be starting the back end development from the scratch. So this is the overall what our course plan. Any questions on this, please ask me. Venu, uh,
Sir, Venu, yeah.
Venu, you are my old student, right?
Yeah, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. Fine.
Okay, sir, yeah.
Fine.
Yes.
Done. Okay, so this is the overall plan, right? So initially we'll be starting with what front end development. So coming to this front end part, already I'm having the presentation. Let me open this. So if you take this front end development, this is front end and back end development. Okay, so as part of front end development, we'll be using what HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and UI5 framework. With all these four combinations, okay, with all these four combinations, we will be developing what front end development. As part of this front end, we'll be developing what views. Just like in module pool, we develop what screens. A module pool program is a collection of what screens. Similarly, a UI5 application is nothing but what container of what views, collection of what views. We should know how to develop the views. We should know how to navigate between the views, how to exchange the data between the views, all those things. Okay, so one front end application might contain what n number of views. A view is like a screen. Then coming to the backend part, as I told you earlier, in the backend part, we'll be developing what OData service. What is the job of this OData service? By using this OData service, will interact with our SAP system. Okay, it can be any SAP server, it can be either ECC, CRM, okay, SCM, HRM, CRM, whatever it is. Okay, so by developing this OData service, we can perform what crude operations: create, read, update, and what delete operations. All the database operations we do by using what OData service. So in the project wise, there are two types of what roles. One is front end developer, another is what back end developer. So front end developer is involved in developing what the views, integrating the views, all those things. And back end developer is responsible for developing what OData service. Okay, you'll have two different roles. But nowadays, what most of the companies are expecting is they're expecting the ABAP consultant itself to involve both in what back end as well as what front end. Anyhow, for doing back end, we require knowledge of what a basic ABAP and what object oriented. But it will be very much easy for the ABAP consultant to also get into what front end development. So if you see here, it is not possible for non-SAP consultant to get into what back end development because they require knowledge of what ABAP. But it will be very much easy for an ABAP consultant to also involve in what front end development. So if you want to what create more job opportunities, your resume should highlight that you are good in what both front end as well as what back end development. And if you're projecting any experience, you have to say that you are involved in both the development process, back end as well as what front end, right? So by using this OData protocol, okay, by using OData protocol, we'll what communicate between the front end application and what OData service. OData is a protocol here, open data protocol. So this is the overall development process. To access this front end, so as I told you earlier, the purpose of UI5 is what is used for what developing what web applications. Web application means obviously it has to be executed in what browsers. Okay. So from the browser, we'll send the request to what front end application. I mean to say UI5 application, which will load the initial view. From the initial view, we'll be navigating across the views by exchanging the data, and as part of these views we'll be consuming the data, we'll be using the data which is retrieved from what SAP system, and that is done by accessing the OData service as part of this views. Overall, the what integration between this front end and back end is nothing but what Fiori application. Am I clear? Fiori application means if you integrate both front end as well as back end together, we call it as what Fiori application. Okay, so here Fiori is not a technology. Okay, so we should not get confused between UI5 and Fiori. Okay, a Fiori is only a guidelines. Okay, Fiori is only what guidelines. So when I say guidelines here, okay, when I say guidelines, it is something like this here. Most all of you are from what ABAP background. Yeah, if you see the comparison between UI5 and Fiori, suppose if you take our ABAP background, to develop the ALV reports in ABAP by using classes, what we will do, okay, we will write what ABAP program. What is the process we'll follow for developing the ALV report? First, we'll take a module pool screen. On top of that module pool screen, we'll place a custom control. Then we will link the container with custom control. Then we will link the ALV grid with container. Then we will retrieve the data, we'll generate the field catalog, and then we'll display it. So we are following certain guidelines to develop our ALV report, and these guidelines, okay, we are writing as part of what ABAP program. Okay, so this ALV report is what finished product. Finished product means the product which is ready to use, which is used by the end user. In order to develop this ALV report, we have to follow certain standards, we have to follow certain guidelines, steps. Okay, that is done as part of our ABAP program. Similarly, a Fiori application is also what a finished product. Finished product means what which is ready to use. Okay, in order to develop this Fiori application, okay, we will be using what UI5. So I can say UI5 is a programming language. Okay, UI5 is a programming language for developing what Fiori applications. Okay, so this Fiori will provide some guidelines, just like for developing ALV report we have some sequence of steps. To develop the Fiori application also we have some guidelines. We'll be following that guidelines, and we'll be developing the application. So I can say UI5 is a programming language for what? Fury. So learning Fury is nothing but what? Learning UI5 frontend and what? Backend part. Okay. So one second. Yeah, just now one person logged in with the name Ana Abab. Can I know the name, please? Hello. Who is this? Vikas. Vikas. How are you? Fine, fine. Yeah, fine. Fine, Vikas. Okay, you can call me after the class. I'll speak to you. Okay, done. Right. So don't get confused between what UI5 and what Fury. Fury is a finished product. To develop that product, we use what? UI5. So most of the people, they'll say that I want to learn Fury. Learning Fury is nothing but learning both what? Front end and what? Back end. If we integrate this front end and back end together, we call it as what? Fury application. Okay, so what SAP has done is SAP has provided many standard Fury applications. Just like if you take our normal SAP environment, to do different transactions, to perform different business activities, okay, we use different transactions. Like for creating sales orders, we use what? VA01. For creating customer, we use what? XD01. For creating material, we use what? MM01. For creating purchase order, we use what? ME21. So to perform any business transaction, we use a standard SAP transactions given by what? SAP. Okay, so what we will do with the transactions? We can use the transactions as it is, or we can enhance that particular transactions by adding some additional fields, or by performing some additional validations. We'll be using that particular transaction. Similarly, what SAP has done is, okay, so if you take our traditional SAP transactions, if you want to create a sales order, what you have to do? We have to use the T code what? VA01. How do we access this VA01? Through what? SAP GUI. Understood? So we'll be using what? SAP log, sorry, we'll be using the SAP logon pad. Okay, so by using this SAP logon pad, I mean to say SAP GUI, we'll be connecting to what? SAP system. Okay, we'll be connecting to the SAP system, right? So here what you'll do, you'll provide your credentials. Try to understand, this is your what? Login screen where you are providing the credentials. Okay, so if it is a valid user, you'll get into the initial screen of what? SAP. From the initial screen, we'll be accessing what? Different transactions, like what? VA01. Suppose here, this is my initial screen. So I want to create a sales order. So what you will do, we'll use a T code called as what? VA01. So when I run this T code VA01, it will load me the initial screen. So to create a simple sales order, okay, I need to navigate what? Multiple screens in that particular VA01 transactions. So in each screen, again, what you have to do, I need to capture what? Some different data. So assume that this is your VA01 transaction. One second, please. So this is your VA01 transaction. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is your VA01 transaction. So in this VA01 transaction, a transaction might contain what? N number of what? Screens. Okay, so this is your initial screen. Okay, like this we'll have what? Multiple screens. Okay, now this is your SAP GUI. Try to understand, this is your SAP GUI. Okay, right. So as a end user, okay, as a end user, what we will do? Okay, we'll be logging into this particular what? We'll log into this SAP through what? SAP GUI. So from SAP GUI, we'll be what? Using this VA01 transaction. This transaction is having what? Multiple screens. So this is a screen one, nothing but what? Initial screen. Okay, and this is screen two, this is screen what? 3, and this is screen 4, and this is screen what? 5. Okay, So these are different screens. So what we will be doing, we will be entering the data in each screen and we'll be navigating from what one screen to another screen. So what I mean to say is, in our traditional SAP transaction, to perform a simple business operation, to perform a simple business transaction, the user needs to navigate across what? Multiple screens, many screens. Okay, the user needs to navigate across many screens. Like this, you will enter the data in what? All these screens. After entering the data in all these screens, at the end, what happens? Whatever the data you have captured in these multiple screens, they get they'll get stored in what? Our database tables, in one or more database tables. Okay, so these are your database tables done. Now what SAP has done is, so instead of navigating in across many screens by capturing unnecessary data, what they have done, they have given what? Some standard query applications. Try to understand. This is your standard query application. This is a standard query application. Okay, so assume that this is a standard query application used for what? Creating what? Sales order. So now I'm a user now. What I have to do now? I have to access this particular query application. So what? How do we log into our traditional SAP? By using what? SAP GUI. So there is something called as Launchpad. Okay, there's something called as Launchpad. So I'm a user now. So what I will do as a user, I need to what? Navigate. I need to access this particular what? Query application. So what I'll do, through this Launchpad, again Launchpad also, the moment you open the Launchpad, it will ask you for the credentials where I have to enter the user ID and password. So try to understand. So if you take a business, you'll have different what roles and what responsibilities. So assume that I'm an employee. Okay, I'm an employee, so I'll have what? Certain roles. If I'm a manager, I'll have what? Certain roles. If I'm a what CEO, I'll have what? Different roles and responsibilities. Similarly, assume that I'm a what? Salesperson. I want to capture what? Order with what? Customer. So what I'll do, I will log, as a salesman, I will launch into what? Launchpad. So when I launch into Launchpad, after giving the credentials, I'll get what? The SAP what? UI5 views. So there I'm calling it as what? Screens. Here I'll call it as what? Views. A free application is what? Container collection of what? Views. So this is view 1 and what? This is view 2. So if I am a valid user, what I have to do now? What happens now? Through this Launchpad, I will initial view will be loaded. I'll capture some data. Okay, I'll capture some data. So you can observe here I am in what? Multiple screens, but here I am minimizing that. I'm minimizing that unnecessarily fields. Okay, I'm capturing some less amount of data, which is very much what useful for creating the sales order. After capturing the data, what I'll do, I will what? Insert this particular data into what? My database tables, one or more database tables. Okay, so how do I access this Launchpad? I may access this Launchpad I may access this Launchpad either through what? Desktop, or I may access it through what? Laptop, or I may access it through what? Tablet, or I may access it through what? Smartphone. Make clear. So this Launchpad I can configure, I can access through any of the devices. Through these devices, I'll be logging into what? Launchpad free app, and as depending on my role, okay, I'll be having different standard free applications configured. Okay, so I'll be accessing this particular standard free applications. So as I told you earlier, there are many standard free applications given by what? SAP itself. You may be using that as it is, or you might be enhancing that, or assume that your customer wants a free application which is not provided by SAP. So what we are going to do, we are going to develop what? Custom free application. So what I mean to say is, as a UI5 consultant, okay, your role is to enhance the standard Fiori applications or to develop what? Custom Fiori applications from the scratch. So as part of our course, we'll be discussing both how to develop custom Fiori applications, then how to enhance standard Fiori applications. Initially, we'll be focusing on what developing what custom Fiori applications. Then later on, we'll be in a position to enhance what standard Fiori application. So this is nothing but your Fiori application. Am I clear? In a traditional transaction, the user needs to navigate across what? Many screens to perform a simple business activity. But what SAP has done, okay, on the go, okay, we call it as OTM, on the move, the salesperson, what he can do, he can interact with the customer. If the customer is willing to raise order, he can capture that particular sales order data through this particular Fiori application, which has got less number of fields, which has got only the relevant fields. Here unnecessarily I have to capture what huge amount of data. So SAP has reduced this, is going to reduce this process, and they have given what, many standard Fiori application with only relevant fields, okay, so that the user need not navigate across many views. So this is the overall understanding of what UI5 and what Fiori. So to develop the custom Fiori applications or to enhance the standard Fiori applications, we use what, UI5. So UI5 is a programming language to deal with the Fiori applications, right? Any questions on this part, please ask me. Any questions? No. Done. Okay, so we understood about this one. Now, let us understand why they gave us as UI5. Why only 5? Why they have not given it as 10? Okay, so let us understand the meaning of that UI5. Okay, UI means what? User interface. Okay, so let us understand the history behind this UI5. So, see here, evolution of what SAP user interfaces. Okay, so initially when SAP was introduced way back in 1970s, initially SAP came up with what? SAP GUI. SAP GUI way back in 1972. So the first user interface provided by SAP is what? SAP GUI, graphical user interface. Okay, right. What is the limitation of this? This is not web based. I cannot run it on what? Internet. Okay. So later on, what they have done, somewhere in early 1990s, they came up with what? Another user interface. Another user interface called as what? ITS. ITS, Internet Transaction Server. Internet Transaction Server, which is web based. Okay, but the problem with this ITS is it has not supported all the SAP transactions. Limited support of what? SAP transactions. And apart from that, cost factor, we need to set up an external server called as what? ITS server. Okay, so this is a kind of failure. There's a kind of failure which was introduced in what? Early 1990s. We require a separate ITS server. Okay, these are all the limitations. Okay, then what they did in late 1990s, they SAP has came up with what? Another user interface with the combination of what? BSPs and what? WebDim Pros. BSPs and WebDim Pros. Okay, so if you take this WebDim Pro and BSPs, if you take WebDim Pro, we have limited coding and faster development. Just like in module pool we have drag and drop facility, in WebDream Pro also we have a drag and drop facility. I need not write much of coding for designing my views. Okay, okay, limited coding and fast development. But the problem with WebDream Pro is what? Beautification is not possible. Means I cannot give my own colors, I cannot apply my own styles. Understood? Okay, because in WebDeam Pro it is based on what? ABAP programming language. So whatever the themes given by SAP, we have to restrict to that only. We cannot add our own beautification. Okay, and another drawback of WebDeam Pro is what? Client side validation is not possible. Client side validation means, okay, I'll fill up one form here. Okay, try to understand. This is my what, a form. Okay, as part of this form, the user is going to enter some data. Okay, or assume that this is your, I want to create an account in Yahoo. So when I'm a new user, I'll click on what, new user, I'll get the registration form. Okay, so after entering the data here, okay, you are entering the data in your browser, what we'll do, we'll click on what, some submit button. Okay, so whatever the data entered in the form, I should able to validate in my client system itself. In my own system, I should able to validate here. But the problem with WebDimpro is what, all this data whatever you have entered in your form will be submitted to what, the server. Okay, at the server side it will perform the validation. So client side validations is not possible in case of what, WebDim Pro. This is also another what, drawback. Means you'll have what, more load on what, server is responsible for validating as well as what, processing. Okay, as because we cannot perform any client side validations. Then we have what, BSPs. Okay, so BSPs, here BSPs beautification is possible because it supports what, HTML. By using HTML and CSS, I can apply what, beautification. Okay, but the problem with BSPs is what, it requires what, lots of coding for designing purpose. Whereas in WebDim Pro, we have the drag and drop facility. We can design the views with a what, less amount of time. But whereas here, for designing itself, we have to write what, lots of coding. This is the drawback of what, BSPs. Okay, this in what, 1990s. Then later on, SAP has come up with a new UI called as what, Web UI in late 2000s. Okay, this Web UI is applied only for what, SAP CRM. SAP CRM. So Web UI, I can say it's a combination of both. It's a combination of BSP plus WebDim Pro. Okay, so this SAP CRM, those who know CRM, it's a combination of both BSP and WebDim Pro. But here the problem with this SAP CRM is, if you are a what, SAP CRM technical consultant, I should have knowledge on what, developer requires knowledge on what, both. What is this, BSP and what, WebDim Pro, for doing what, client side development. Okay, and again, in order to fetch, in order to perform crude operations in your SAP system, okay, that is for extracting the data, we require the knowledge of what, BOL, business object library, and generic interface library. BOL and what, Genil, BOL and Genil. And here another limitation is what, customization and extensibility is what, complex. So as I told you just now, there are many standard fare applications given by what, SAP. We have the option to enhance that particular standard fare application. I can easily do the enhancement. But whereas if you take this CRM, for doing this enhancement of the standard applications, you require what, lots of coding, and it is complex. So this is another kind of what, failure. So what SAP initially has thought is, they have given this Web UI only for what, SAP CRM. If this was a success, they would have given that to what, other flavors. Okay, for a normal ECC SRM kind of thing. But since it's a kind of failure, okay, in late 2013 and early 2014, SAP has came up with what, a new user interface called as what, UI5. So since this is the fifth user interface given by SAP, they gave the name as what, UI5. Understood? 5 indicates what here, fifth user interface introduced by what, SAP. What are the earlier user interfaces? These are things: GUI, ITS, BSP, WebDim Pro, and CRM, and this. Okay, so what is this Fury? As I told you, it's not a technology. It is a Fury is what? A new user experience. A new user experience provided by what? SAP. Means all the SAP transactions now I can access on what? Mobile, that is smartphones, tablets, all those things. Okay. Fury is what? It's a set of what, guidelines compatible with what, any device, desktop, laptop, tablet, or at mobile. It is responsive. Yeah, good, this is a very important feature. Responsive means what? Suppose, assume like this, suppose, yeah, I develop one what a free application, like online shopping, for example online shopping. If I access that free application in desktop or laptop, okay, assume that that particular online shopping portal contains what, some table. Okay, so if I'm accessing that application desktop and laptop, assume that in the desktop and laptop it is showing me some 10 columns, because the width and height of desktop is what, more. Desktop and laptop is what, more. So I'm able to see what, 5 columns. If I access the same application inside what, tablet, it might reduce automatically to what, 6 columns, because the size, the width and height of the tablet is what, less compared with what, desktop. Okay, so in tablet I'm able to see only what, 6 columns. Similarly, if I access the same application in what, smartphone, it may show only what, 3 columns. So what I mean to say, you need not write any separate logic for that. Means if it is desktop, show 12 columns, if it is tablet, show 6 columns. No, it is responsive. It is responsive in nature, means depending on the device we access, automatically it is what, responsive. Okay, it is platform independent. It is platform independent, means I can run it on what, Android smartphone, iOS smartphone, any kind of smartphones. I can access this particular free applications. Platform independent, it is not operating system specific. Okay, then powerful theming and branding. Powerful theming and branding. If you take our traditional SAP transactions, what will happen, you'll have what, normal what, theming given by what, SAP. You'll get every, all the screens in what, this look and feel, some light bluish color, ash color kind of thing. Okay, ash color kind of thing. But whereas here, this, to develop this front end application, we use a combination of what, HTML CSS na? So by using this HTML CSS, we can provide what, powerful theming and what, branding. Okay, and it is efficient and what, performance. Efficient and performance means that how it is what, faster, means as I told you, this UI5 makes use of what, JavaScript. By using this JavaScript, I can perform what, client-side validations. What I mean to say is, before I submit my data to the server, I can do the initial validation at what, client-side level. So I am splitting the load between what, client and what, server. So that is the reason, performance-wise, what it is, what, faster. Am I clear? So these are the features of this particular SAP UI5, and this is the history behind what, SAP UI5. Any questions on this part? Is it clear to everyone? No questions? Done. What is client-side development? Where you are referring, Sanjay? Client-side development means not side client-side development. Client-side validation. Client-side validation. We should not call it as client-side development. Client-side validation means, as part of this SAP UI5, what we are going to do, we are going to develop the views. What is a view? A view is basically a collection of what, UI elements. Just like in module pool, we'll place different UI elements like checkbox, buttons, input fields. Similarly, as part of views also, we'll design the views with what, different UI elements. So assume that this is your view. Okay, so once my view is displayed in the browser, what you will do in the view, okay, view will show some content to the user, or inside the view will capture some data. So I'm entering some data. Okay, I'm entering some data. After entering the data, I have to click on what, submit button. So what I have to do, I have to submit this data to my server. So before I submit the data to the server, I need to do some validations, like assume that this is my what, username field. Now my validation is what, username should not contain any special characters. So I need to check whether the entered username contains any special characters. Okay, and password. Password should be minimum of what, 8 characters. So I'm going to do some initial checks in my client system itself. Okay, these checks are done by using what, JavaScript. So by using JavaScript we can do what, client side validation. If all the validations are performed what, correctly, we'll submit the data to what, server. At the server side, what we will do, we will process our request. Process our request means what, we have to fetch the data from our database, or we have to insert the data into database, or modify the data, whatever it is. Okay, or if I fetch the data from the database, what I have to do, I have to return the data to what, my client system. So I am going to send the response from server to what, client. Understood? So, or in another ways I can say that client side development means, you can assume this one, this front end development I can call it as what, client side development. Okay, the actual data is coming from what, SAP system, but we should not call it as client side development, we call it as what, front end development. Done. So as I told you initially, we'll be starting with what, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, UI5 framework. Okay, so just to give a quick clue on that, HTML, by using HTML, what we will do, we will design what, static web pages, web pages. Then by using CSS, what you will do, we will apply what, styles to what, HTML content. Okay, we'll apply styles to what, HTML elements. Then by using JavaScript, what we will do, we will validate our what, web pages, and we will provide dynamism to what, web pages. So what is dynamism, we'll understand very soon. When we start the JavaScript part, we'll provide what, dynamism to web pages. Then we have what, jQuery. jQuery is also JavaScript, but I'll say that as what, it's a predefined JavaScript library. Predefined JavaScript library. So if I use a plain JavaScript, I need to write lots of code. By using jQuery, we have some predefined functions, nothing but predefined JavaScript library. So by using limited code, we can validate our web pages, or we can provide dynamism to what, web pages. Then when I say UI5 framework, when I say UI5 framework, nothing but what, I am referring to what, UI5 library. UI5 library. So what is a library here? Again, a library is a collection of what? Classes and what? Interfaces. Again, what is a class and interface? A class can contain different properties, methods, events. So as part of our course, we'll be referring to this UI5 library for doing the front-end development. So just to give a quick idea on this, suppose if I search for what? UI5 demo kit. Okay, I'm searching for UI5 demo kit. So you can see we have the standard site, sap ui5.ana.ondemand.com. So on a daily basis, we'll be referring to this particular library. Without this library, we cannot do any kind of front-end development, because you'll have thousands of classes and interfaces, properties, methods, events given by SAP. Okay, so we cannot remember each and every class and interface. Compulsorily, we need to refer to this particular documentation, sap ui5.ana.ondemand.com. Okay, so if you go to this API reference, it will show me what different what classes and what libraries. So here also we have different layouts, controls. Okay, so if I click on this main controls, you can see here it is showing me all the classes. So you can observe here, these are all the libraries. sap.yum is one library. So each library contains a different classes. So if you click on this, right hand side, you'll get that particular what, class. Okay, so everything is what, object oriented. Okay, when I say object oriented, doesn't mean that we should know object oriented of ABAP. Okay, we require object oriented ABAP for developing the backend part, but for front end you don't require any what, ABAP background. If you have any programming skills, that is more than sufficient. we should have interest on what programming, then we can easily get into what front end part, but we must refer to this particular library. So it's a continuous learning process. So as part of our front end, we'll be discussing these things just here. Yeah, in the UI5 front-end development, initially, okay, what is the prerequisite? HTML, CSS, and what JavaScript. So for HTML, CSS, I'll spend only 1 or 2 days, and then we'll discuss JavaScript for 1 week, and after that, we'll get into what how to install Eclipse, and then we'll be segregating the syllabus like this. First, we'll be discussing controls programming, then different types of layouts, different types of views, different types of models, and we have some miscellaneous concepts that we have something called as binding technique. So this entire thing is nothing but your front end development part. Okay, so daily what we'll do is you need not take anything during the session. Whatever I discuss in the during the session, I'll send those diagrams, detailed notes, everything. Okay, so you need not take anything during the session. Just focus on the session. If you have any questions, you can ask me at any point of time by unmuting, or you can use a chat box. Okay, and whatever we are going to discuss as part of this front end, okay, that is more than sufficient that you are having strong knowledge on what front end. You need not refer to any other material, you need not refer to any other site. Whatever we discuss during our course, that is more than sufficient to project what 2 3 years of experience on what UI5. You cannot project more than 2 3 years because UI5 itself has came from what 2014. Okay, so I cannot project 4 years 5 years experience. Okay, so just project max 3 years experience. Okay, if you are confident, project up to what 3 years, or else 1.5 to 3 years, anything is fine. Right, so this is our overall plan. Tomorrow onwards we'll be starting with what HTML, CSS. Again, we are not going to learn complete HTML and CSS. Not at all required. Not at all required. Okay, just a glimpse of HTML, glimpse of what CSS. Our focus should be from JavaScript. Again, most of the people will think that to get into JavaScript they require Java knowledge. Java is different, JavaScript is different. There is no relationship. So even if you don't know anything about Java, it's absolutely fine. We'll be starting from very scratch of what JavaScript. Okay, so before I wind off for today, if you have any questions, please ask me. And the sessions daily will be from what 6:45 a.m. to what 7:45 a.m. Initially, it will be from Monday to Friday. Later on, if everyone agrees, we'll have it on Saturdays also. But officially, it is from what Monday to Friday. So tomorrow around same time between 6:40 6:45, I'll send the meeting ID. So we'll start with what HTML part. Any questions for today, please ask me. Ramesh, any questions? So we'll continue this batch. Last 3 weeks back I started, but due to other schedule in the late hours, I'm unable to continue that batch. But this time everything is freezed out, so we'll continue the batch. So there will be no further breaks. We may have break, yeah, we may have break after front end for 1 week or so, but front end will continue for the next 45 days. After that, we may have break for 1 week to 10 days before we start what back end part. So plan is by January what 13th or 14th, I want to complete the front end part. So for that, what I'll be doing in between is I'll be sharing some recorded sessions also. Recorded sessions, okay, right? So it's not possible to discuss each and everything. Whichever I'm not discussing, I'll share that recorded sessions from the previous batches. Okay. And during the sessions, if you feel anything complex, you can drop me a mail. I'll share that recording also. But it's not download access, it's only preview access for few days, but it's not a continuous process again. I'll try to share maximum of sessions, but please do not depend on the recording. So every weekend, whatever I discuss for that week, I'll share that recorded sessions for preview, and I'll keep that sessions for 10 to 15 days. Then you can access at any point of time. So I'll share that recordings on a weekly basis, not on a daily basis. Recordings is not part of the course. It is only an additional thing which I am providing from my end, and that too only preview access for a few days. And daily notes I'll send, that is sufficient to practice with examples. Any questions, please ask me. Abhinash, are you there? Abhinash, Abhinash, can you please speak once? Abhinash, are you there? Okay, fine, no problem. So we'll continue tomorrow then at same time around 6:45. Okay, okay, fine, not an issue.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine, yeah.